Excited, nervous, eager, anxious, those are just some of the words to describe how I'm feeling as I ride to Hustler Casino in Los Angeles, California. Today, I'll be playing a massive poker game and risking $75,000. This show is the biggest, most viewed live stream on YouTube right now, and I have a seat for the Wednesday 50-50 uncapped buy-in game. I start out with a $25,000 buy-in, tying the largest ever poker buy-in in my poker career. I've been on a downswing and running bad the last few months, but I'm not going to let that affect me today and my plays. I'm ready to let it rip. I'm ready to play some big pots. No fear. Let's get started. A couple familiar faces in this lineup. In seat number 1, Mariano, a fellow YouTube poker vlogger who I've actually been watching for the past 3 or 4 years at least. He's also a crusher here on Hustler Casino Live on the Wednesdays and Friday games. Sitting next to him is Mike X, another player I've played with a few times. He's also a regular on Hustler Casino Live and a very fun player to have at the table. The other players I'm not too familiar with. Sandor. We've got Dylan Flashner, who's an actor, producer, myself, of course, Dr. P, and Morpheus. This is going to be a fun game filled with some huge pots. The biggest game I've ever played in my entire life. Make sure to stay tuned all the way to the end of the video. I end up playing a massive one. Starting it off here, I've got the $100 straddle on under the gun. It folds to Mike on the button, who calls $100. King, queen suited for me. I bump it to $500 and Mike makes the call. Heads up to our first flop here on Hustler Casino, and it's bad for us. Ace 9 for red. I check to him and he checks back. Turn queen of diamonds, giving me second pair. I bet 300. Mike calls 300 and the river card's a 7. I bet small, a little bit less than half pot, $700. Trying to squeak out some value from any sort of pair, a weaker queen, a 7. But he ends up folding his 3 and we take down the first pot here in Los Angeles, California. Next up, a little bit bigger of a pot. Mariano raises under the gun plus 2 to $300. Pocket 8's in the small blind. I think this is a hand we want to 3-bet sometimes, so I decide to re-raise. I make it $1,300 to go. I don't really want to call and go super multi-way out of position with this hand. Also thinking that Mariano could be a little bit wide in this smaller game. He does end up making the call, and we're going heads up to Jack 2-6, all diamonds. With no diamond in my hand and overcard to my pair, I slow down and check. Mariano puts out a bet of $1,400, and I'm going to call here. I could balance out this check call with hands that are also strong, such as aces or kings with a diamond, a weaker Jack X hand, or even some big flushes that I flopped. So I think it's fine to check call this bet. Turn card 5 of diamonds, now 4 diamonds on the board. I check over to Mariano, and he slows down and checks this one back. I river a set in the 8 of diamonds, but it doesn't matter. There's a flush on the board. My set is no good. I'm just going to try to get to showdown here, so I check. Mariano looks back at his cards and then fires out a bet of $2,400. Kind of an interesting spot for us here. Basically, if we call, we're just praying to chop, meaning if he has a hand like ace, queen, black, or queen, 10, black, we're basically just calling to chop the pot. Now, he could also be betting with hands that we're losing to, hands such as the 10 of diamonds, the queen of diamonds, even hands like ace of diamonds or king of diamonds. I've seen Mariano get a little bit tricky in some spots before, so all in all, given the fact that if we call here and we're right, the best thing that we're going to do is chop the pot. We can basically never win. I think we're just going to have to let this one go. And we do end up folding out a chop. Mariano gets this one. We are now playing the stand-up game. I have yet to get a button. I need to win a hand. $200 straddles on. This game is big. Dylan races it up here to $500, and I've got queens in the cutoff. I decided to go big here, $2,200. This is a very large 3-bet size, especially in position. The reason that I do this is because I feel like, 1, Dylan's going to be calling a little bit wider because of the stand-up game. And 2, I've just got a good hand. Let's bump up this pot. Dylan does make the call, and we go heads up in position with queens to 5, 8, 9, all diamonds. To be honest, this is a really bad flop for my hand. I don't have a diamond, there's a bunch of 2 pairs, all sorts of sets, straights, and flushes that my opponent can have. When he checks, I do think betting here can still be good. Get called by diamond hands, 1 pair hands. I also don't think Dylan is going to be getting crazy out of line with a big check raise bluff with a hand like king of diamonds or ace of diamonds. Feel pretty confident he'll just be calling with his 1 pair and his drawing hands, which is what he does. Turn card 10 of hearts, Dylan checks over to me for a second time, and now I have to decide, do I want to continue to bet and bloat this pot or check? Ultimately, I decide to put in some pot control here and check behind, and the river card pairs the board with another 10. I do like this river card pairing the board. It's less likely he has a 10. Now counterfeits 8, 9. If he checks to me, I will be going for a value bet, but that doesn't happen. Dylan now constructs a bet and fires out $3,600. This is a pretty big bet for me. I mean, I usually play 5, 10, 25 at the Hard Rock with a $2,500 buy-in. This bet is bigger than the buy-in I play in my usual games. However, I can't fold. I make the call, and Dylan tells me I'm good. Pocket queens win a $15,000 pot, $7,000 worth of profit for me, and I'm up to a $30K stack.
For the lack of effort.
Yeah. Alexis, too much of a donk to fold.
Too sticky.
No, that's a good call.
It's just you bluff so often, Dylan. How can you blame him?
Well, that's what I was hoping that everyone would be, gathering.
I was honestly trying to think back. Have I ever seen you bluff? I think I have.
Next up, there's a raise by Morpheus in the hijack. Dylan calls in the big blind. I complete for $200 more with 8-6 offsuit. This is a bad hand, but I'm just getting such great pot odds here. There's so much dead money in the middle. I have to call 200 to win 1,000. We end up seeing a flop of ace 10-7. I flop a gut shot to the bad end of a straight. Check over to Morpheus, who bets out $500. Dylan makes the call, and I could easily fold my hand, but I actually think this could be a spot where I could try to steal the pot here. Thinking that Morpheus could be betting here with all sorts of continuation bets. Given the fact that Dylan just called, he could have a 10x hand, a 7x hand, a weaker ace-x hand. I bump it up here, a semi-bluff, putting pressure on my opponents. I make it $2,200 to go. Back over to Morpheus, thinking he'll basically only call here with 2 pair hands, sets, and hands like ace-king, ace-queen, thinking he'll be folding out basically everything else. And when he does call and Dylan folds his ace, I think we're going to shut this one down unless I hit a straight, which I don't. Turn card's a jack, I check, Morpheus goes all in, and we lose a little over $2,500 in this hand. Next up, I find myself in an interesting spot against the 2 familiar players at the table. Mariano straddles to 200, Mike calls 200, queen jack offsuit on the button. I raise to $700. Back over to Mariano in the $200 straddle. He completes with jack 10 offsuit, and Mike calls here with king 5 suited. Going 3 ways in a pretty bloated pot already to 9-10 jack. Flop top pair open-ended when they check to me. Actually pot control on this super wet and connected board and check this one back. By checking back here, I can also disguise my checking range too to having some strong hands as well. Turn card is the 2 of spades, and Mariano now leads out for a $1,400 bet. I don't know why, but I feel like every time Mariano bets, he's just always bluffing. I think that's just the kind of reputation you have when you pull some huge bluffs on YouTube live streams. If Mike folds here, I may consider raising with my jack, but Mike calls the $1,400. Now, I think raising would be an overplay. I also think folding would be way too tight. That leaves one option, call $1,400, $6,500 in the middle, with top pair on a sketchy board, and it gets even sketchier with the 4 of spades. Backdoor flush gets there. Mariano now snap checks. I feel like he doesn't have anything at all. And now Mike X fires out a big bet, $4,500, and now I'm in the blender here with my top pair. When Mike leads out into two people, he's saying he has a very strong hand, a flush, and that's basically it. He would be raising all of his two pair sets and straights on the turn, so this is kind of a tough spot here. My read was that Mariano let out on the flop with a draw, completely missed. Mike X maybe call with a pair or a draw and possibly missed. What you guys didn't see throughout this live stream is that Mike had been getting quite out of line. He had been bluffing, getting caught, having a high VPIP. Also, he watches my vlogs and watches Mariano's vlogs. Maybe he's trying to pull a big bluff so that he can show it to the table and show it to us. I don't know. I think it's a close spot, probably a coin flip with Mariano behind me. Think I could easily fold this hand, but I get sticky and put in the call. Now it's back over to Mariano with top two pair. He's in an interesting spot as well. As you can see, my reads were completely off on this hand. I thought Mariano was bluffing on the turn with nothing. I thought maybe Mike X was bluffing, but after reviewing this hand, I think my call here is very bad. Given the fact that Mike X is probably very rarely bluffing on this run out, on this river into two fairly sticky players, I think it's just a pretty easy fold, especially if I have a queen in my hand. And obviously, we get shown the bad news. King 5 of spades by Mike. A 15K pot not going our way. We lose around $6,000 in this hand. We were up a couple $1,000, and now we're in the hole about 2K.
Days, we love it.
Happy birthday.
Dylan also having nice days so far. Morphus and Mariano stuck 10,000.
We collectively as a table decided to play another stand-up game. This is actually the first hand of this new game. Nobody's won a pot and gotten a button yet. Encore calls. Dr. P calls 50. Mariano raises in the hijack to $300 with Queen 2 offsuit. Cutoff makes the call, folds to the small blind who calls $300, and I peel back pocket kings. A perfect squeeze spot. It may look like I'm raising light, but I've got it this time. I make it $2,000 to go. The other players fold back over on Mariano, and he snap 4-bets me to $5,000. He throws in a red chip and says raise. Action back over on me. This is going to be a big pot. I had just added on to my stack. You can see I have $40,000 in front of me. I added on for 20K right before this hand. This could be a big one. Now I have to decide, should I call this 4-bet or should I 5-bet here? There's definitely merit to both options. If I 5-bet, I can get more value and pump up this pot against hands that were crushing like pocket 10s, pocket jacks, pocket queens, ace king, ace queen. However, if I do 5-bet here, he'll just fold out all of his bluffing hands such as ace jack offsuit, ace 10 offsuit, maybe even ace 5 suited, and the occasional queen 2 offsuit. So I think 5-betting is fine. However, we are 800 big blinds deep to start this hand. I think calling is fine as well, given the fact that Mariano is a very aggressive player. Sometimes under-repping your hand is good. It'll allow him to blast off with some bluffs and also potentially value own himself on some small boards. So my plan here is just to call this 4-bet like I would do, with almost 100% of my range, under-rep my hand, and hopefully call down almost runouts depending on what happens. It is a risky play just calling a 4-bet with kings, and we do not get rewarded. An ace-high flop, one of the worst ones for me. All of his bluffing hands pre-flop, ace 5 suited, ace 10 offsuit, ace jack, ace queen, all made top pair. Now pocket jacks are beating us with a set. I do not like this flop. However, when Mariano puts out a bet of 1/4 size of the pot, given the fact that he'll be c-betting 100% of the time on this board in a 4-bet pot, I'm going to call with pocket kings and see what happens on the turn. $16,000 in the middle to another bad card. It's a 10. We're now losing to even more hands, losing to pocket 10s now. Jack 10 is now beating us. King queen is now beating us, although that's a little unlikely given the fact that we have 2 kings in our hand. I check over to Mariano, hoping he slows down and checks this one back, and we can maybe get to showdown, but that doesn't happen. He loads up and fires out a big bet. Half the size of the pot, which is $8,000. Action back over on me. I've got 34K left to play for, and I have a big decision here. Mariano is not the kind of player to give up on a pot, and it's pretty clear to me that he's setting up a river jam for around $26,000. So not only am I facing a turn bet of 8K, I'm also going to most likely be facing a river jam for $26,000, which makes this spot even more tough. I'm trying to think in my head, what bluffs am I beating in a 4-bet pot? Well, I'm beating some hands like 8-9 suited, 5-6 suited, 7-8 suited, maybe hands like King 5 or King 6 that he was going crazy with. Unfortunately on this board, I'm just losing to a ton of value hands. I mean, he's never betting this size with pocket queens. He's also not going to be betting this size with a hand like Queen Jack or King Jack either. He's pretty polarized here to having sets, straights, and good 2-pair hands or bluffs. And to be honest, I just can't think of too many bluffs in his range. We have the King of Hearts in our hand, which is a bad card for us to have. I don't know, it's kind of a tough spot, but ultimately, I think I'm just going to have to let this one go. As you guys can see, and I'm about to see myself, we made a bad fold and get completely owned by Queen 2 offsuit. God, this one hurts. This is tilting. Not only am I going to look stupid at this table, I'm also going to look stupid to tens of thousands of people watching and all the people who watch Mariano's vlog as well. Oh my god. However, let's say the board came out 10-6-6, 7-4, and Mariano bet 8,000 and put me all in on the river, and I called and doubled up in an $80,000 pot. I would look like a damn genius. Sometimes in poker, things don't go your way. Sometimes they do. I took a risk by slow playing pre-flop, just calling the 4-bet with pocket kings. Got a bad board, made a bad fold. However, I'm happy with the fold. I think it's a pretty standard fold there in a 4-bet pot. Don't think there's really much I could do. Just like my hairline in the last 3 years, this session has gone downhill fast. We're now stuck $10,000, but the game is good. People are bluffing, people are playing hands. There's a lot of action, a lot of money on the table. We can get it back. We just got to keep grinding. A few hands have passed after pocket kings. You can see a few players have the yellow button in front of them, and I do not. I'm in need to win a hand. Sandor raises, Dylan calls. I call with king jack offsuit in the hijack, which is a pretty loose play. I got to get in there. I didn't really feel like 3-betting Sandor when he raised from early position. I don't think that this is that great of a call pre-flop. Probably should be 3-bet or folding. But either way, we go 6 ways to a jack-high board, giving me top pair. Action checks to me. I bet out 1,000. Dr. P calls. Mike X calls. And the turn is a jack, giving me trips. Loving this turn card, obviously. Mike X checks over to me. I could continue to bet, but I actually think slow play trapping here is good, given the fact that Dr. P has yet to win a hand. He's got around a pot-sized bet left in his stack. If I check to him, maybe he'll put out a bet with a bluff or a worse hand, and we can just put him all in, or maybe he'll go all in himself. So I check, and Dr. P does put out a bet, but for a pretty small sizing, only $1,000. I immediately now think that he has a hand like 6X, or maybe pocket 7s, or pocket 8s. I'm expecting Mike X to fold versus this $1,000 bet, but once he calls, I now put Mike X on possibly a 6, pocket 7s, pocket 8s, or maybe a hand like 5-7, maybe something like 7-8 or 3-5 for a straight draw. I could raise, but I think calling is fine as well. This keeps all of my opponents in with worse hands and their bluffs as well. The river card is overkill. Quads for me, the best hand possible. Mike X now checks over to me, and I feel like now the slow playing is over. I think that if I check here, Dr. P will just check back a lot of hands that he may call a bet with. If he does have a pair or a 6, one of these guys probably has a full house. I've got quads. I don't want to let this check through, so I'm going to lead out now for around half the size of the pot, which is about how much Dr. P has left in his stack. I make it $4,000 to go, and to my surprise, watching this now, Dr. P just snap folds a full house with a 6. Mike folds his 5 high. I show for the table quads. I get my button, not going to be losing the stand-up game, but I actually kind of got owned here by Dr. P. He just snap folded a full house versus that bet. Must have thought I was never bluffing there. Not sure what he put me on, but that's pretty awesome fold. Not the best outcome for us. I would have liked to get a little bit more money out of quads, but can't complain. We win some money back. We are trending in the right direction now. The graphics are slightly messed up. It says that Mariano raised in this hand, but he actually straddled for $100. Turbo now raises himself to $400 in the cutoff. Pocket nines for me in the small blind. I 3-bet to $1,500. Same kind of thoughts as earlier with pocket eights. Want to 3-bet out of position with a hand like this. Turbo makes the call with ace-3 of hearts. So pocket nines versus ace-3 to a king-jack-2 board. I check here out of position, and Turbo checks behind. Turn card jack, I check again, and Turbo checks again. River card's an 8, and now I definitely think I can bet small, trying to get value from ace high, queen high, pocket pairs, and 8. I make it $500. Maybe this small bet will also induce him to potentially do something crazy on the river, which does happen. Turbo now raises me to $2,200. Never folding, so I just snap call, show my cards. He says you're good. And we take down this pot, picking off another bluff, around $4,000 of profit. We are working our way back to even. I'm in the game for $45,000, just about $1,000 away from that even mark.
Does not make a whole lot of sense. Really representing pocket eights and nothing else.
With a queen deuce. No more folding. I'm going to look humiliated in front of 10,000 people.
Nicely played on that river by Lex.
Another stand-up game has started. I straddle under the gun to $100. Encore raises to $300 with ace-king. Mike X calls, Sandor calls, Turbo calls, Dylan calls, and I look down at ace-queen in the straddle. I think it's a great spot with all this dead money. Stand-up game in progress. We should pop this one up. I make it $2,000 to go. Encore doesn't think for too long and makes the call. When he does this, I think he's going to have some middling strength hands like tens, jacks, ace queen, ace jack, king queen. I feel like he's going to go all in with aces, kings, queens, ace king, hands like that. So when the flop comes out 9-8-2 and I completely miss, I decide now to check, with thoughts of potentially check raising all in, thinking that Encore was playing a little bit timid. If I check raised all in, he would fold out a lot of pocket pairs, but that doesn't happen when he checks this one back. Turn card now is a 4, and once I check to him on the flop, I just don't think he's ever checking back a pocket pair. So now I'm going to bet, try to get him off hands like ace-king, trying to get him to fold hands with equity like king-queen, king-jack, queen-jack suited, all hands like that. So I make it $1,100 to go. Encore doesn't think for too long and folds his ace high. We get this small bluff through. We show for the table. We get our button, and we take down $3,000 worth of profit. I'm not sure really what was going on in this hand. When under the gun raises, Turbo calls, Dylan calls, I've got 6-2 suited in the hijack and elect to 3-bet to $1,700. Now, this is clearly not a good hand, but I want to get in there. I just don't want to always 3-bet kings and ace-queen. I mean, what if the flop comes out 6-2 ace and he's got ace-queen? We could win a big pot. I'm also just hoping he folds, but that doesn't happen. Under the gun makes the call, other players fold, and we go heads up here in position to ace 4-5 2 diamonds. We do have a gut shot straight draw on an ace high board. He checks, I bet out 900, and he makes the call. Turn card's the 8 of diamonds, now bringing in a flush draw. He checks to me again, and I did not raise pre-flop with 6 deuce to then give up on the turn. I'm going to fire out again. I make it $2,200. This time he gets the job done. He folds, and we win.
Sandor, irritated, lets the jacks go.
You have some?
There was a little bit of liquor.
No, not this time. I was bluffing, but most of the time I do.
We start a new stand-up game, and Mariano straddled to $400. Everybody folded, and he won a button uncontested. This now motivates Dylan to put on the $400 straddle from middle position, which means I have to act first. I then asked the dealer, well, I guess I could triple straddle, right? She says, yeah. So I decide to put on the $800 straddle. I've never ever straddled for this amount in a poker game, especially when I'm around $40,000 deep. For all of you guys in the comments the last 2.5 years calling me a nit, yeah, take that. I immediately get punished though when the tightest player at the table, Encore, raises to $2,000. Oh my god. Folds back over to me. I've got 6-5 offsuit. Not going to be calling here and giving actions, so I decide to fold.
Go. Encore gets a marker.
Ooh, that's a real hand.
Never doing that again. My backers are going to be pissed.
Another interesting hand. There's a $200 straddle on 9-7 of clubs for me. I raised to $500. Pocket nines on the button for Mariano, and he calls. Mike calls for $500, and we go 3 ways to Jack, Jack 7. Flopping 2 pair for me. Mike now leads out into the field for a $500 sizing. I could raise, but I think calling's fine. So I call, and Mariano calls as well. Turn card's another Jack. This seems a little bit resembling an earlier hand I had, what I would do for King Jack here. Mike X now continues to bet for a $1,500 sizing. I've got a full house, never folding, so I make the call. Mariano folds his pocket nines, and we're now heads up to the river, which is a 6, and Mike now slows down and checks over to me. Once Mike X leads out, bets, and then checks this river, I feel like he probably has a 7 as well, so I actually thought for a second of 2x size pot bet on the river to try to get him off a 7 for a chop, but then I thought that would be a little bit too risky in case he would have a hand like 8s or 9s or maybe a slow play Jack. I think maybe just betting smaller here is fine. I end up settling on a 1/3 size pot bet around $2,300 and get snap called.
And Lexo value bets the river and gets snapped off. And Mike X is going to win this one.
The only reason I didn't raise you, because you showed me quads before. It's like,
Make a nitty check back.
It's always somewhat of a cooler full house versus full house. I actually think I should have checked back this river, but moving on to the next hand. After the full house versus full house, I add on for another $10K. So I'm in this poker game for $55,000, sitting on $48,000. I'm down $7K. If I come all the way here to California, I want to play some big pots, so I raise now ace-9 suited to $300. A new player in this game who just sat down 3 bets me out of the small blind at $1,300 to go. Action back over on me, and I feel like with ace-9 suited, we're going to be dominated a lot when he 3 bets out of the small blind. So I think a fold is fine. I feel like a call is okay as well, but I actually think the best option here could be putting in another raise and making my hand a 4-bet bluff. The reason behind this is because I think this player is going to have a pretty wide range 3-betting out of the small blind after I raise in the hijack. He's not just going to have huge big pocket pairs. I think he's going to have some hands that will fold to some more aggression. So that's what I decided to do. I put in another raise. I make it $3,800 to go. I like 4-bet bluffing with this hand. I have a suited ace. I can flop flush draws, top pairs. I don't block any hands that he may 3-bet and fold, such as king queen offsuit, king jack offsuit, jack 10, hands like that. He doesn't think for too long and calls. So we are playing another 4-bet pot here on Hustler Casino Live. This potentially could be a big one. There's around $8,000 in the middle, and the flop comes out ace high, giving me top pair. Small blind player checks over to me. I bet 1/4 size of the pot, 2,000, and he makes the call. Turn card queen. I think I'm going to pot control now. He could have a better ace. He could also have turned a set of queens. So I'm going to check this one back for deception, and like I said before, pot control. Final card is the 3 of hearts. Backdoor flush does get there. I don't improve to any 2 pair. I still just have a medium strength ace. But when my opponent checks to me for a 3rd time, I think I most likely always have the best hand here. With that said, is there any value in betting this river? If I bet here, will he call me with pocket 10s or jacks or kings? He probably doesn't have a queen in his hand once he calls to flop, so I think checking back is fine. But after looking at his stack, he's got about a pot size bet behind. I'm pretty sure I've got the best hand, and when you got the best hand in a big pot, you might as well bet it. And I feel like the best sizing here is to make it look like a bluff and go all in. So that is what I decided to do. I rip it all in for $13,800 effective in a 4-bet pot with an ace medium kicker. I don't get snap called right away, which is great. That means he does not have a flush. He does not have 2 pair. He doesn't have a set, but the more he's thinking about it, the more I'm getting scared that I'm possibly value owning myself. What if he has a hand like ace jack suited or ace 10 and he's afraid that I've got ace king, which is why he's thinking about it? Oh my god, that would be terrible. Then I think to myself, well, maybe I'm bluffing with this hand. Maybe if I bet all in, he'll fold ace 10, putting me on a set or 2 pair or flush or ace king. So I really have no idea what I'm rooting for. Am I rooting for him to call with a worse hand? Or am I looking for him to hero fold a slightly better hand? Now, when you're all in on the river for over $13,000, you want to know if you're value betting or bluffing. And at this point, I had no idea if I was value betting or bluffing. I was just kind of going with it, and as time went on, my heart rate started increasing. I started to get more and more worried that I'm going to lose this huge pot, but I just thought to myself, look, if he's got ace 10 or ace jack or ace 5 or ace 3 and he calls and I lose, I'll just chalk it up to a bad beat and bad run and end up rebuying again. My opponent goes into the tank for a very long time, over 2 minutes of thinking, and finally, he comes up with his decision.
Ju calls it off. Well, Lexo got a lot more value there than I would have.
Yes, that's a bluff.
That's not a bluff. You
Yeah,
just
that's a bluff. He knows he's bluffing.
You thought I was bluffing? I wasn't sure.
Lex, was that a bluff or no?
No, of course not.
The funny thing about this hand is while my opponent was in the tank, Mariano and Mike X made a side bet whether I was value betting or bluffing. And to be honest, I couldn't tell them. At first, I thought I was value betting, but then I thought maybe I was bluffing. But wow, we win a huge pot, a $40,000 pot. Ace 9 suited, we get hero call by pocket kings. I guess my all in on the river really stumped him. Pretty sick hand there. We were down $7,000, grinding it out all day. And at the end of the stream, win a massive pot, the second biggest pot I've ever won in my entire life. I'm now sitting on over $66,000 in front of me.
Said he doesn't know.
So he didn't say that actually. He said no, it wasn't. I thought I had
said
the
he
best
blacked
hand.
out.
Of course he's gonna say that because that was good. He won the pot, but believe me.
But you're saying if June called with a better hand, then Lex would have said it was a bluff.
No, you can't.
When I went all in, I did not think I was bluffing.
Give me the money.
And he doesn't. Oh, he let it go.
Did you travel alone?
Yeah. I went to Dallas
They're-
on the way here.
they're gonna give him the button anyway, though.
On the way back.
Yeah.
It's such a long flight.
Is it? It's like 5 hours, right?
I mean, you're on the
Sort of
plane
looked
for
like what
6
Sandor
hours
did
from
earlier.
here to Florida to Los Angeles.
Yeah, you're sitting there for 6
Yeah,
hours.
it's tough.
Oh, sorry about that.
I don't like flying either. I'm not a fan.
Right in my
Same
hand.
here.
Yeah.
Why don't you like it?
It's not the fear of like dying. It's the closed in, having no control to
Being
get
in
out.
some metal tube.
Yeah.
You can't
And then the zero control over like what happens, you know?
Yeah.
Like on the way in here,
Freaks
this
you out.
never happened to me before. We're coming into land and I can see and I'm like, we're almost there. Like it's almost there. And the guy goes "Vroom," and goes back up.
It happened to me once. He did a go around?
Yeah. And it was raining and it was cloudy.
Ugh.
And I'm like, put it down, like, come on. We went around, then came back in finally.
Yeah, go-arounds are common when like there's any even like hint of a
Yeah.
unsafe landing condition.
He said the guy in front of us was going too slow. I'm like, how do you
That's
mess
nuts.
that up?
That is it for the poker hands in this vlog. Wow, what a sick session. At one point, I was down over $12,000, but I kept grinding, kept playing, won a massive $40,000 pot, and got myself out of the hole. I bought in deep, I pushed myself, got into some close and tough spots, made some wrong decisions, made some right decisions, and ended up winning $9,255, averaging a 35% VPIP for this big game, which I'm very proud of. Afterwards, we end up playing post-stream for a little bit. A few players bust out and then leave. I end up playing around half an hour, three-handed with Mariano and Turbo. I buy myself some dinner and call it a night. A nice profit, an awesome stream. Thanks again to Hustler Casino Live for having me. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you.